jazz arrangers and composers. Today I'm going to talk about dynamics. Unfortunately, with the advent of pop music in the 50s and amplification, dynamics have become pretty much a thing of the past in pop music, and that's bled over into the jazz world, so that most jazz musicians just play loud all the time. And when you only play loud, it eliminates one of the sets of the basic opposites that makes music great: loud and soft. Very important. Loud and soft, and the gradations in between. So, we have basic opposites: loud and soft, the three basics. Loud and soft, fast and slow, and high and low. So why would you want to get rid of one of the three basics? It just gives your music much less character. So we want to bring more dynamics to our music, because when I stand in front of a band and they start to play, I just go, well, you've been playing with all the loud bands, now I want you to obey the dynamics on the page and also create more dynamics. I like to leave some dynamics up to the players. I'll put in the basic ones that I really insist upon, that my piece really needs, and then sometimes in rehearsal, the guys in my band anyway are very experienced, so they'll come up with some really good ideas to add dynamics. Sometimes, I'll have a soli for the saxophones, and they'll start it softly, and then they'll crescendo, and then they'll bring it down, and then stuff that I didn't even consider when I was writing it, and it just makes the music come to life. Duke Ellington never wrote any dynamics in any of his music. He left that up to the players. But I do hear some basic things. We're going along. I want this, like a soft shout chorus, and then all of a sudden, so you got to write that in so that the whole band knows that. That's obvious stuff. But then there's also something that we call inner dynamics. That is like shaping notes. You got a whole note. You're going to hold out that whole note. You want to hold it out like that, or like your computer does on playback, or do you want to hold it out like a virtuoso musician would be, like da or da? We call it shaping the note. And usually when we're playing long notes, in jazz we'll accent the beginning of the note and then hold it out at a low volume. If it's followed by another note, then we'll crescendo into the next note. Occasionally, very, very occasionally, we'll do this effect of forte piano and then crescendo into a rest. Something like that. That's an oddity. You'd have to write that in music. It happens rarely. There's an Ellington, actually a straight horn piece from the Queen Suite, Northern Lights, that does that. All right, so when I talk about shaping notes, let's listen to, this is a piece of mine dedicated to the Thelonious Monk. It's called Monkey Business. And listen to, just for the dynamics. Forget about all the other things that I'm doing in this chart. And just listen to the dynamics. See how the players add dynamics to what's on the page, or very little. They just naturally want to make it sound like jazz, and so they shape the notes. In jazz, we don't really play loud or very loud, forte or double forte, all that often. Mostly we play mezzo forte and sometimes a little softer, sometimes a little louder. But we save those real loud spots for when we really need it. And they don't usually last very long. Mostly what we do in jazz that sound may come across as loud is really we just accent notes. For instance, the top note of a phrase, all the top notes we accent. That's just normal, everyday jazz phrasing, just as everybody does in their solos, or most people do in their solos. And so you want to bring that to written parts as well. You could write some of those in. Just be aware that the more marks you put on the page, the harder it is for the players to read all that. And usually what happens is they don't accent anything. If you write accents in on almost every note, they're not going to accent any of them. But if you wrote, say, one accent in the whole piece, you could demand that they'll accent that one. And they probably will anyway, because they'll say, oh, this is different. I got to do this accent. So here's an example of some forte piano with crescendo. So you get to hear what that is. This is a chart I wrote on Poor Butterfly. Let's check out the dynamics on that section. Normally, in every kind of music, Western music anyway, that I know of, when you ascend, when you play an ascending scale, and then when you descend, so we don't just do it like that, we go, it's just, when I was in high school, we learned that that's how you play music. That's called being musical. As you ascend, you crescendo. As you descend, you diminuendo. Here's an example of that. This is from a piece of mine called Bumper Cars. I'm going to play a pretty long section of this. Listen to the dynamics. Notice how there's descending figures, ascending figures, and how they do subtle crescendi and diminuendi. Something else to think about is, do you want a subito piano or a subito forte? You want it to happen right away? Or do you want a gradual build-up where you would have a crescendo or diminuendo into the next dynamic? That's an option. So I might, sometimes I'll just write subito piano to make sure that they're playing loud, da 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 dash, do 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 da. And if you put subito, that grabs their attention. Let's talk about unisons for a minute. I wrote a book with our lead trumpet player, Bob Milliken, on the art of swing lead trumpet playing. And so I said, I asked him, Bob, so when the section is playing in unison, do you play a little louder than them to make sure they'll follow you? He says, no, actually I play a little softer. I said, well, why do you do that? He said, because everybody plays too loud on unisons. And that's true, because if you play too loud on a unison, it's usually out of tune. It doesn't blend well. And to get a good blend, you have to back off your part, play it a little softer. Here's another excerpt from Poor Butterfly with some unisons. Notice how on the unison they play softer, and then when they get to some harmonized notes, then they play louder and with more accent. So as you can see in this last example, when something is harmonized, they play louder. Now supposing you have two opposing ideas. One is, and they're happening at the same time. One idea is, you say a unison line, and then there's a harmonized, some harmonized chords simultaneously. Say like the trumpets are in unison, and the saxophones are going in harmony while the trumpets are in unison. So I would write, say the trumpets are mezzo forte, and then I would write the saxophones a dynamic level higher than the unison. The unison people, you got a bunch of people on the same note, so it's going to be come through a little stronger. And also, you know, unisons, you want to get a good sound on them, so they need to be a little softer. There's always that question, I get this one a lot. So you have the trumpets are in unison, and so you want them in octaves. Do you put two guys up and two guys down? Well, I don't. When I was young and I played in trumpet sections, I worked a lot with Jimmy Maxwell, and if there would be a new guy in the section, he would say, "Listen, if your part goes above high C, just take it down an octave." And then the guy would always say, "Oh, well, but I'm really good. I have a really good high register." And Jimmy would say, "Listen, if we're going to be in unison up there, one of us is going to make a mistake, and it's not going to be me. So just take your part down the octave." So basically, we'd have three guys down the octave in a section of four. We'd have three trumpet players down the octave, and one guy up the octave. And what that does also is the one guy is by himself up the octave. He can play louder because there's nobody doubling on his part. If somebody's doubling on your part, you're going to have to back off and play softer. So having the one guy up and three guys down, that gives you the opportunity to make that unison louder. Another thing is I don't write octave unisons in the trumpets that would take the trumpets into their low register. That bottom part, if it goes into the low register, it's not a good blend. I would just write them in unison. Put the trombones an octave lower. That's a perfect blend. Trombones and trumpets at the octave. I'm going to finish up with this an interesting situation that occurred. I wrote a complex passage for woodwinds, clarinets, flutes, bass clarinet. I wanted the brass to play like an octave unison, opposite at the same time, but opposite kind of idea and counterpoint. Too loud if they play the brass or an octave, because the trumpet's up pretty high, and I want this to be strong. The brass open would obliterate what's going on in the woodwinds. We wouldn't hear them. And so the solution was to put the brass in straight mutes. The straight mutes retain the brightness and cut down on the volume, so it got a good blend. So let's take a listen to this. This is from my arrangement of Hindustan. Interesting dynamic stuff. And then it goes into some really loud climactic stuff where they're holding out these chords really loud. We don't do that a lot in jazz, where we hold out something full volume for the whole thing, but it's an effect here. And because we haven't been doing that through the whole piece, the rest of the piece is pretty soft. It's very dramatic. What happens then is that it goes back, there's a DES, where it goes back and it does the head again, and then there's a fade ending with just the two bass clarinets and the rhythm section. And that's soft. So the point here is the dynamics is a lot of what makes this piece work. Thanks for watching this episode of Writing for Big Man. If you like this lesson, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And check out the other lessons on my channel. If you want to know more, there's tons of information in my books, Creative Jazz Composing and Arranging, Volume 1 and 2, which you can find on my website in the description below. The books have plenty of examples and techniques, and you can download the scores to follow along. Thanks for watching, and happy arranging.